Forget the heroic statues and the polished Hollywood epics. If you think the Colosseum was just about muscular men and noble sacrifices, you've been sold a lie. The real arena was grimy, bizarre, and far more twisted than Ridley Scott would ever dare to film. We're talking about celebrity barley munchers, emperors who rigged the game like spoiled children, and a stadium floor that was essentially an open sewer. These are 15 unfiltered facts about the Roman gladiators that prove history is way weirder than the movies. Number 1. The barley muncher body type. Forget the shredded six-packs of 300 or the lean muscle of modern action stars. If you stepped into a real Roman gladiator school, you'd find men who looked more like heavyweight wrestlers than fitness models. These fighters were known as hordearii, or barley men, because they survived on a massive, high-carb diet of barley and bean mash. This wasn't because they were poor, it was a tactical choice made by their trainers. The goal was to build a thick, protective layer of belly fat. In the arena, a shallow sword slash that would disembowel a lean man would simply slice through the barley muncher's fat, creating a spectacular bloody wound that thrilled the crowd without actually hitting a vital organ. It was biological body armor, spectacle for the fans, and survival for the fighter. Number 2. The blindfolded bloodshed. If you thought regular combat was scary, imagine the andabate. These were the clowns of the killing floor, forced to fight in helmets with no eye holes. Imagine 50,000 people screaming while you stumble around in total, suffocating darkness, swinging a sharpened blade at nothing. The crowd didn't watch this for the skill, they watched for the comedy of errors. They laughed as fighters tripped over corpses or accidentally stabbed their own teammates. Historians suspect these roles were reserved for condemned criminals or the lowest-ranking recruits, turning a terrifying execution into a dark, slapstick variety show that kept the audience laughing while the sand turned red. Number 4. The thumbs-down myth. We've all seen the movie scene. The emperor slowly rotates his thumb towards the ground, and the loser gets a blade to the throat. Well, Hollywood got it 100% backwards. In ancient Rome, the thumb pointed down actually meant lower your sword. It was a signal of mercy. The real death signal was likely a thumb pointed up towards the throat or thrust sideways, mimicking the actual stabbing motion. Another theory suggests that a closed fist hidden in a toga meant spare him, while any visible thumb meant finish the job. For 2,000 years, we've been using the mercy sign to celebrate victory, when in reality, a Roman emperor giving you a thumbs up was the last thing you'd ever see. Number 5. The Colosseum's sewer seats. The Colosseum was a masterpiece, but the hygiene was a disaster. There were no intermissions in Rome, and if you left your seat to find a latrine, someone would immediately steal it. As a result, 50,000 people essentially sat in their own waste for 12 hours straight. While the wealthy elite in the front rows had marble seats and attendants, the cheap seats at the very top were made of wood and packed with poor, slaves, and women. Because of the slope of the stadium, the fluids from the top rows would eventually trickle down the stone steps. By the time the final fight started, the upper tiers of the world's most famous stadium were essentially an open-air sewer. Number 6. Ancient sponsorship deals. If you think athlete endorsements are a modern invention, think again. Top-tier gladiators were the face of every product in Rome. Their likenesses were carved into oil lamps, painted onto wine jars, and molded into clay figurines for children. Wealthy women would even pay for gladiators' sweat. It was collected from the fighters after a match, mixed with olive oil, and sold as an expensive perfume or face cream believed to be a powerful aphrodisiac. Graffiti on the walls of Pompeii advertised fighters like they were rock stars, with slogans like "Celadus the Thracian makes the girls swoon." They weren't just fighters, they were walking billboards for the Roman economy. Number 7. Mythological executions. The Romans hated a boring execution.
Instead of just hanging a criminal, they turned the death into a theatrical production called mimes. A prisoner might be dressed as the mythological hero Icarus, fitted with massive wings made of wax and feathers, and then dropped from a crane to his death to recreate the fall. Others were forced to play Orpheus, placed in a beautiful garden setting to play music, only for a stage door to open and release a bear that hadn't been fed in a week. To the Romans, this wasn't just cruelty, it was educational. It brought their myths to life, showing the public that crime doesn't just lead to death, it leads to becoming a gruesome piece of performance art. Number 8. The infamous slave owners. In the eyes of Roman law, gladiators were infames. This meant they were legally on the same level as actors and prostitutes, people with no rights, no honor, and no voice in court. Most were technically property owned by a lanista, trainer. However, the arena was a meritocracy. A successful fighter could accumulate massive tips from fans and prize money from the emperor. This led to a bizarre social loophole. A man who was legally a slave could become wealthier than the citizens cheering for him. Some gladiators were rich enough to buy their own houses, their own fine clothes, and even their own slaves to serve them in the barracks. They lived a life of luxury while being legally invisible. Number 9. The ash water sports drink. Ancient Romans didn't have Gatorade, but they understood the science of recovery. Modern archaeologists who studied a mass gladiator grave in Ephesus discovered that the fighters' bones had a mineral density that was off the charts. The secret was ash water. After training, gladiators would drink a mixture of charred wood ash or bone ash dissolved in water. It sounds disgusting, but it provided a massive dose of calcium and magnesium. This gray sludge acted as an ancient supplement, making their bones almost impossible to break and helping them recover from fractures that would have ended a normal person's career. They were the original Iron Men, fueled by the remains of the campfire. Number 10. The massacre in the stands. Watching a gladiator match was a dangerous game, even if you weren't the one holding a sword. Emperor Caracalla once took audience participation to a horrific extreme. While visiting Alexandria, Egypt, he felt that the local crowd was being disrespectful and making jokes about his height. Instead of ignoring them, he signaled his Praetorian guards to draw their weapons and move into the seating sections. In a matter of hours, thousands of spectators, men, women, and children were slaughtered in their seats while the games continued below. It was a brutal reminder that in Rome, the entertainment could turn on the audience at any moment if the man in the high seat felt a bruised ego.
Number 11. Death was bad for business. Movies like 300 or Gladiator suggest that every match ended with a killing blow. In reality, that would have been a financial disaster. A lanista invested years of training, high-quality food, and expensive medical care into his fighters. It ended in a technical submission, where one fighter raised a finger to admit defeat. As long as the loser fought with enough bravery and skill, the crowd and the emperor would usually grant him missio, release, allowing him to live, heal up, and fight again in a few months. Number 12. Funded by urine. The Colosseum is a symbol of Roman grandeur, but it was built on a foundation of gross economics. Emperor Vespasian needed a way to fund the massive construction, so he looked at the city's waste. Tanners and laundries used human urine because of its ammonia content to clean clothes and process leather. Vespasian placed a pee tax on the collection of urine from public latrines. When his own son, Titus, complained that taxing bathroom breaks was beneath the dignity of an emperor, Vespasian famously held a gold coin from the tax under his son's nose and asked if it smelled. When Titus said no, Vespasian replied, "And yet it comes from urine." This waste money helped build the most famous arena in human history. Number 14. The referee's stick. Roman combat wasn't a lawless brawl, it was a highly regulated sport.
Every match featured 2 referees, known as the summa rudis, who wore white tunics and carried long wooden rods. Their job was to ensure the fighters stayed within the rules: no biting, no eye gouging, and no stalling. If a gladiator was being too cautious or trying to avoid the fight to stay alive, the referee would use his stick to beat the fighter until they engaged more aggressively. They could even pause the match to allow a fighter to fix a piece of armor or a broken sandal. The referees ensured that the violence remained high quality and that the crowd got the bloodbath they paid for. Number 15. The retractable navy roof. The Roman sun is unforgiving, and sitting in a stone bowl with 50,000 other people would have been a recipe for heat stroke. To solve this, the Colosseum featured the Velarium, the world's first retractable stadium roof. It wasn't a simple sheet. It was a massive, complex system of linen awnings and pulleys. It was so difficult to operate that the emperor had to station a permanent detachment of 100 specialized sailors from the Imperial Navy in Rome just to run it. These sailors would climb the masts at the top of the stadium and sail the roof, adjusting the shade as the sun moved throughout the day. It was a feat of engineering that wouldn't be matched for nearly 2,000 years. Number 16. Drinking from the grave. The relationship between a fan and their favorite gladiator didn't end at the arena gates or even at the grave. Many gladiator tombstones have been found with libation pipes built into the stone. These were lead or clay tubes that led from the surface directly into the burial chamber below. On special anniversaries, devoted fans would visit the cemetery and pour wine, honey, or oil down the pipe to feed the spirit of the fallen warrior. They believed the dead could still enjoy the taste of a good vintage. It was the ultimate fan tribute, literally sharing a drink with a ghost to ensure he remained happy in the afterlife. The Colosseum was a place where high-tech engineering met low-brow cruelty. It was a world of barley men, navy-powered roofs, and fans who treated killers like gods. History isn't a polished movie. It's a messy, ash-drinking, thumb-turning reality. If you want to keep digging into the weirdest corners of the past, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next one.